Well, hello there, everyone. You hear a show right here is like to talk about from what we do know, from what we don't know, and talk about if we're extremely happy. And I'm sure that most of us here wonder to where that yeah, that basically that what does it basically mean for whenever we're going to be extremely happy about something, to be proud about something. And one of those could be is to where that yeah, that anything yeah, if we were to do this study about for any type of emotional feeling and especially to where that maybe reuniting with an old friend, or maybe that you're reconnecting with somebody, or that by the time you actually finally that and I know a lot of times that the way I usually feel too is to where that from whenever to be extremely happy is to where that any idea that I know that more likely is to where that for anything that more likely that works is like so far as maybe for advanced work or anything like that. So let's just say if I were to be on a job and then thinking about it to where if I were to come up with an idea for something that more likely that I know that may improve or change the results or so, and think about it to where that I'm pretty happy with that. But on the other hand, these right here are some pictures right here from my early childhood. I'm sure most of us have seen right here, like with this picture right here. This picture right here would look like that if I were, like, would you say, be crying or upset or so. And, this right here would have been me right here when I was about, 4 or 5, something like that. But on the other hand, that I would look like I was crying in that picture, and I might warrant to her that yeah, was I crying just because I didn't think that I was getting equal amount of attention or so, or it may have been something that was going on during that time, or something like that. And then you have right here's my name right here, and as well as for like these pictures right here, and one of those would be like to where yeah that you know for like any type of moments to where between proud and sad, and as well as like for you know uh, type emotional feeling. And I know like with any doctors that they may warrant to where, which I know I wonder is to where why is it that we start crying whenever that something to where something happy that it comes up to where is to where that it like for how is something that is arranged, and then thinking about as to where that if we want to call it maybe what you call a happy ending or so, or maybe a happy moment. And a lot of times it seems like to where I see that about almost every day, but sometimes it just seems like to where that yeah, maybe it's in your imagination to where that yeah, that for anything that goes on, and then thinking about if you're getting anywhere or if you're getting behind. And I know that a lot of that happy, extremely happy, emotions that I could be, dealing with is that knowing about, how I'm doing in school as well as like for a job though. So we may warrant to where that, yeah, that you get real frustrated whenever you think that you're getting behind on something that somebody that may think about is to where that they were not aware of something, and then thinking that you're the only one that that's you're the only one dealing with the problem. You're the only one having to deal with that situation or so. But let's just say that on average, to where that with these pictures right here is that they can kind of like would say get an idea for like with anybody's to where that for what does it usually mean whenever you start crying about something that you're thinking about. And I know even whenever I'm at work, or maybe whenever I'm working on something, listen to the radio or anything like that, I start crying over something. I tend to blow my nose a lot, and sometimes that I don't know if that's something that maybe we can ask a doctor about, as to where that what do you call that, to where that you just start crying and you just start that your noses start running, and it's like Warren to where that hey that for like if it's really what you call is like to where that the feeling is to where that whenever you're listening to the radio, it's going to remind you of something, in particular, such as maybe memories or the fact about is to where, and I know that a lot when I'm talking about it's like for decisions is to where, like with anybody, that they may warrant to where anything that you may do for your career, and thinking about that somebody's going to try to get you to change your mind or so. And sometimes you feel like you just want to fight for your rights, knowing about that. No, I don't want to be a mechanic, or a carpenter or a plumber. I want to be an artist. So, and I know that a lot of times, like with anybody, is to where that a few people that may have talked to me at one point about getting into another study, into another career, maybe becoming a lawyer, and like with anybody that they may say is to where that I could see you being a lawyer too, Mr. Matthew. I'm like, yeah, that helping people fighting their case, and as well as maybe for like maybe a doctor or a lawyer, you ought to be a lawyer, and you're like, well, I want to be an artist. So a lot of times that, like with anybody, with parents or whoever, that they may learn to where that if this artwork is means so much to you, and more likely is like, so be it. But then as long as you're careful. But yeah, and that's another thing too, besides like rocket science. And I know that I was into science for a little bit too when I was young, as like as well as for language art skills and stuff, and reading, reading stories. But on the other hand, it's like yeah, that some people that they may talk to people about is to where getting to another major, getting into sports, getting into more sports and social activities, such as weightlifting, and as well as the Olympics, and as well as maybe the show, the sports and other games that go on, maybe around town or so. And I know that, and a lot of things that I do know more likely is about sports though. So I know people that may talk to me and maybe getting into more into sports. But I know with me though, I played some sports whenever I was young, but a lot of the stuff that I like to do, a lot of times, was a lot of it was artwork. So anybody that may learn to where that, yeah, that that is a career and study that you've been into ever since you were 3, ever since you were preschool. That thinking about is to where a lot of that work that you were doing, especially in the classroom, the teachers liked it, and they comment you, and knowing about, even though if it got stressful at times, a lot of things about a career that we call stressful. One of those was because that we may think as to where that somebody else that that you may be used to, where you start working on something, and then you're pretty impressed with the work, but then somebody else is going to be working on about maybe the similar thing, and their results that turn out to be better. And I know I talked about this before, but what do we call that, to where that yeah, that to where how much support can we show between one another, to where that we may think is to where other people's examples that could seem like that they are just a little bit better, compared to your own. And I just really think though that some of it could have to do with, yeah, but almost everybody's going to have their differences about how they do something. But one of those would be is to where that, yeah, that knowing about you have other people who have maybe the same interest in what you do, and they may say is to where, yeah, well, what have you learned about me? It's like whenever I started, that I only knew so much. So I keep thinking, though, it's like if I were to be writing maybe in a journal or so, and I'll be writing as to where that really, what has anybody learned about me necessarily? And anybody like learned to where, well, we also learned as to where that, any ideas, is like, you may think that it's all in your imagination or so, but really that you start working on something, and then the next thing you know, it's like we may think that, well, yeah, that's a good idea, or not such a good idea. You decide not to use it. But really, that maybe giving other viewers the opportunity to where that they can study about for what you learned, as well at the same time for what they learned. And I know that a lot of the stuff right here we may think as to where we don't see a difference, but I use about maybe 3 different fonts right here. You have right here is my name, and as well as we may see some of this stuff maybe like on maybe the professional type of media, websites or so, and like just the way how that they're placed and put together maybe on a portfolio. And let's just say this example right here could be maybe for like anybody would probably say, yeah, especially on your birth certificate or so, driver's license, that this could be like maybe something that could be used for like maybe security measures. And I don't know, has anybody before ever used anything for like a security question, security question, one of those could be is to where that what makes you happy and sad at the same time. So one of those will be is to where that you meet up with one of your best friends, at a meeting. You didn't think that they were going to be there, but they were there. You were kind of glad to see them too. You were glad to see them. But on the other hand, to talk about for extremely happy. And I was also thinking about using an idea for like very happy, but like for extremely happy to where so happy to where that you just start crying, or that other emotional feelings that come around, and then you start jumping up and down. I'm sure most of us know as to where that if you're going to be so happy to the point to where that you just kind of what you call, I don't know if you get carried away. You might get carried away just a little bit, but it's like you just start crying, and then you just start screaming. I guess anybody probably say shouting, but really, what do you call that whenever you start shouting? Anybody that may say that you may hear that before you start crying, but you start yelling and shouting. And I know that I don't know if it was anything maybe in the immune system, anything about maybe the nerves, or just about maybe muscle reflexes or anything like that. For like where does it start? Does it start what you call from what we hear and see and taste, as well as from what we smell, and like with anybody, is to where that you hear the news about something, about somebody graduated, and thinking about is to where that really that what's the first thing that comes to your mind, knowing about if it's the cry or maybe the smell and maybe the taste. So you're like Warren to where that that one of those could be to where if you miss something, or that something that just comes to your mind. So it just seems like to where what I call like for advanced brain powers, to where that this is a type of, I'm calling what I had to say is to where like what I call advanced brain power. It's basically a meaning to where that's something to where you're basically helping yourself improve to where what you can learn from what you knew before, from what you know now, and then knowing about you're working hard to try to improve your brain, improve your GPA scores. And I know that I hear on the radio a lot of times about how people is to where there's programs to where how students improve their learning skills. And I know with me though, I keep thinking though is to where that you may have heard that before, but like for bright and intelligent. And like with me though, that I may look like what you call a nice healthy young man, a happy young man, but then sometimes there may be situations to where that I get real down and depressed sometimes, and then I may get real frustrated at times. So it just seems like to where that you have right here is me right here, and like anybody that may want to where that I would be dressed in maybe like a little outfit right here, like if I were to be playing maybe softball or something. But let's just say this is right here with me right here, and like with anybody that may want to where whenever you're maybe looking at bills or so, or maybe whenever you're looking at papers, you may have that look on your face, such as to where that you're thinking about is to where that's like what you call like a stressful moment to you, to where that you're concerned, you're worried about the situation. And really, I'm like, how many people whenever they graduate, then we may have heard that before, to where that you feel what you call nervous and proud at the same time, nervous and happy at the same time. So whenever you're starting a new job, that more likely that anybody that may think about is to where that, yeah, you're nervous about that new job. One of those is because it's going to work just a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit harder, work just a lot different from what you're used to. So that's why that I think it's really a good idea to put together a portfolio, and maybe just like maybe writing a journal about is like for anything about for whatever that happens, is that the thinking about is to where that with the jobs though is that the things that look forward to on a job is to where that they ask you questions, and then you get them honest answers, and as well as for how it's handled, as especially. And I know like with anybody that with me though, having very less experience, is to where that be extremely happy about, is to where that for anything that does wind up turn out very well. And one of those could be for a GPA score, and another one could be is to where that yeah that you get assigned a duty or a job, and thinking about is to where that yeah that there are what you call going to be some times, and like with anybody, is to where if you're going to have a job or a responsibility, you're taking care of something, and sometimes it's going to be in that situation to where that people are telling you that oh, it's not getting done. Hey, that we don't have it. That something failed to to get completed or something like that. Something failed, and so that's why that a cry or any type of emotional feeling means a number of things, and one of those could be like maybe for a relationship. So I'm sure anybody that more likely wants to, where there's probably a lot of meanings for like what you call for like a for emotional feelings like for extremely happy, and one of those will be is to where crying. I guess crying don't mean is to where that you're sad all the time. So you may start crying whenever you're extremely happy about something, and as well as that you're glad to hear the news. And I know like for any news about whenever somebody graduates, especially. And another thing I also want to mention about is to where that you may start crying whenever for anything that's going on, is to where that is this the right thing to do? Is this the smart choice to do? So that there's like going to be like for questions and answers that go through your mind, as to where that was this hey, was it the choice that you made, was that the smart decision to to go back, open up a business, make a business card, make a business card, tell people about a little bit about yourself, and a little bit about what you do, and as well as you make a deposit or so that you decide that you want to go ahead and set a goal, just to do this or that. So a lot of times, though, it seems like to where any decisions that we do make is that sometimes it seems like to where that if it was really a bad idea or a good idea. So it seems like to where that it may have worked for you a number of times, to where that decisions that you do make, they're thinking that you may be getting somewhere, but then thinking about that you maybe want to help somebody else out, and thinking that well, they didn't ask you, so you can just what you call just listen up, or just that nobody's talking to you or so. But on the other hand, that for any any discussions, and I know a lot of times if it's going to be maybe like on Facebook or Skype or some sort, and like any type of a discussions chat, if you're going to be chatting with somebody, and then they start talking to you about concerns of the matter, as well as any issues, as well as that if they're having any problems, and thinking about it, to where usually that I try to solve my own problems, is what I mean, is to where if I come up with a problem, and then I try my hardest just to try to solve it. So anybody that may want, to where you ask a question, and then you try to seek answers, you try to guess the answers, and maybe you want to get somebody else's feedback about what you think about it as well. You start talking about something like, yeah, well, I'm assuming that more likely to fix that. You'll try using this or that. So it seems like to where like you go into discussions about that, and you're like Warren, to where that whenever whenever you start talking about something, and it seems like to where that you're able to work out a situation about how to fix something, and let's just say somebody else that joins the conversation, and they may say is to where, hey, you thinking that you got a lot of situations going on, like with me though, that I'm trying to figure out. I got problems too that I'm trying to figure out as well. So anybody that may want to where that 3 weeks of after trying to solve something, after trying to fix something, 3 weeks or maybe 3 days or so of having to try to fix something, and you're like Warren, to where that's something to be proud of, to where by the time you actually get it fixed, or if you're not able to fix it, then it seems like to where that like you deserve a pat on the back just for trying. But on the other hand, too, that like you have right here is that I want to share this picture. I don't know if anybody has seen this picture right here yet of me whenever I was young, but happy 4th of July to everyone too. For today being July the 4th for 2016, celebrating with fireworks, and as well as like for that for any festivals going on around town, fireworks displays. But on the other hand, that I know, like with anybody's, to where that for if we can think about it's like maybe the best celebration ever or so, and you're like Warren, to where that the best celebration ever came is to where whenever a lot of the family was in town, and you were able to get plans worked and arranged, And I know with anybody that if you're going to be setting plans ahead of time, sometimes it seems like to where it's very frustrating whenever there's a change of plan to where plans are not able to work out, they're canceled or postponed at the last minute. So that's just a thing about us to where anybody that way Warren to where that between happy cry and a sad cry. And you're like Warren to where like that you may hear it on the radio about as to where that really that for any tears that may come down our cheeks and you're like Warren to where that really that people weren't to where Matthew, are you crying? Well, what's wrong? Well, I see stars, or hey, I see this what you call this idea. I didn't think that it was going to be work. It would work, but there's like what you call some sort of job and or a duty that I'm sure anybody like Warren to where that yeah, well, I'm happy for you that things were able to work out. But like I keep thinking, no, necessarily to where that with anything that I'm working on is like one to where I make a suggestion, and let's just say if it works, and anybody that may work to where, oh well, good idea, Matthew. I'm like, well, I didn't think they would mean anything other than that. Well, go ahead and try it and see if it works. But anyway, there may be a number of situations that go on, but on your hand too for extremely happy and I know that like with anybody that they weren't to where about is to where that you start talking to somebody and then you're like weren't to where that you start shouting and like oh hey hurry I'm happy for you so that's just a thing that we may have seen it a lot of times or heard about it, maybe for graduation or maybe a promotion on a job or so. And thinking about it to where that you start crying. And you're like, one to where, are you crying? Oh, well, there's nothing to be ashamed of or there's nothing to be sad about. But anyway, so that's just a thing about us to where that anybody that whenever they start crying, that could also mean is to where they think of what you call happy thoughts, happy feelings, as well as for happy emotions. Is that we may hear a song that's going to remind us for that particular time, and warrant to where that yeah, that's something that you thought was extremely hard from the beginning, and then 3 weeks later, it's like it's not so hard. It's something to where that by time yeah, that by the time maybe class is over with, maybe by the time a job is over with, it's like warrant tour that yeah, that after completing a number of courses and after finishing up a job, and you're like warrant tour, well, wasn't what happens now? Like, well, after you finish this task, after you completed that job, or so after you finished the job, the project, and now it's off to what you call any data that needs to be transferred off to the new career that you wind up going to. So think about it to where that after something's put together, it just seems like to where that yeah that right here is to where like anybody that may want to where that I put this together right here. It may seem like what you call something to where it just kind of comes up to where yeah that oh it's just a flashcard, it's just a poster or so, but it's just an artboard. But I put this together, and it more likely it's like I keep thinking though as to where yeah, it's my work. It means quite a bit to me. But then if somebody else looks at it, and you're like worried to where oh okay, well I can read it. So anybody that may want to where that yeah the person speaking is more likely going to be the person who's going to be hailing the voice recorder and being like what you call the auditor or maybe the director or some kind, and you're like wanting to where yeah happy 4th of July everyone, and to let you know everyone that for what makes us extremely happy is knowing that for anything that we may want to write about and knowing about how to speak our own words. How about the story? You want to talk about a story, and you want to kind of what you call say it in your own words and answer the questions in your own words. And thinking about is to where that anything that we may think is to where we work real hard on something, and by the time we finally get it to work, it's like that's something what you call to be proud and extremely happy about. And like with anybody that you're like one to it by the time you actually get it to work, and there may be some times to where you're like one to where yeah you get mad you get mad enough to where you break something or you may start saying a few things, whichever, and you're like wondering to where that yeah. But on the other hand, that really for like any job that you may have heard that before, to where if it was easy, then it maybe everybody would be doing, especially for like business. If you would be opening up a business and thinking about necessarily to where that yeah that it's not easy. It's very complicated. I'm like you're going to have issues that go on, and thinking about it to where that you try to show somebody else some as much support as you can, especially. So that's just the thing about us to where from what we do know and from what we don't know is for like extremely happy. But anyway, for knowing about for that look that we may have is like knowing about are you crying or are you but and I know like with anybody is to where that you get really frustrated whenever you can't find something and whenever you can't whenever you're trying to do something and sometimes it seems like the direction goes by the total opposite to where that you're like oh hey you're trying to work something your way and sometimes it just don't work and you get frustrated about it. You're trying to get something done, you're trying to get something turned in, you're trying to get something paid or anything like that, and sometimes it just it's very frustrating whenever you try and get it to work. So I don't know anybody that may want to her what's the best solution to how to solve that, and I guess you could probably say is to her that it seems like it's better to think before you actually do it. So it's like think about it, or think about for what you do, and then for what you think that more likely what could more likely happen after you do that. So I guess it seems like it's better to think for about a minute. It's better to think for 30 seconds before you actually do something. So that's usually the way I think about it. It's like for like don't judge something before you know it. It's good to think about something before I do this. That really that to think about before you actually do it and knowing about okay, well you think that this will work. So that's just the way I think about it. But anyway, but thanks for watching Maybe 25 and have a great day. Talk about for extremely happy. It's like also is like talk about for extremely happy. You have right here like for anybody. I'm sure most of us have heard that before. To where talk about for anything that is wrong, and you're like Warren to where that really anything that you're going to be working on, and you half the time you're like Warren to where what am I doing wrong? And if there's any situation that comes up to where that while you're working on something, and all of a sudden it's like that maybe something that job application or something like that that you turn in, and then you're trying to get something worked or done or something like that, and you're like Warren to where that it seems like half the time that something went wrong. I'm like, well, on the other hand, that with like say between right and wrong, and you're wondering necessarily to where you wonder to where well about almost everything. We thought maybe everything was done correctly. So thinking about is to where that after about maybe a few days or maybe 2 weeks later, and all of a sudden it's like we may get a phone call about something related to maybe a job offer, and anybody that may want to or be extremely happy about that, even though that we may think necessarily to where oh yeah I remember doing that, but I didn't think that I was qualified or that I didn't think that I did it right because so sometimes that we may think that to where that whenever we work real hard on something and then something that seems like that we think that something that didn't work just it's like thinking about is to where that yeah that after you complete or after you fill an application after you complete a form or so, and then let's just say it's been about 3 or 4 business days and no phone calls or no mail back or anything like that, no responses back yet, and sometimes that it seems that way to where that some people that may think is to where that you may get a little bit upset and start crying about is to where well what am I doing wrong? But on the other hand that for anything that we may think necessarily to where that for how we ask we may think to ourselves as to where what are we doing wrong? And I don't know. I keep thinking necessarily to where that really that I don't know necessarily to where if it's really done wrong, but just on their hand too. I guess if it's on what you call that waiting moment, if we want to call it maybe a waiting moment, or then it takes time, but for like a waiting moment. And I know like with anybody's to where that for a type of waiting moment that may last for maybe a couple of days or a couple of weeks or so. So just thinking about as to where that anything that I could be doing and thinking about, well, that yeah, that I start working on something and then I think that, well, am I done with it? Oh, well, I'm not sure. Well, I think so or so, and so I know that sometimes that we may think necessarily to her that something that were working on, but then according to what the directions say, they said is to place an X or maybe a mark, mark this or mark this column or mark that column or so on the application. So that on the application, I ask you to complete the application or a resume or so a certain way according to what the directions are stating. And we may see that we may did it just a little bit differently. And I know, like with anybody, that they may say, "Oh, well, wait a minute. Oh, okay, I think I did it wrong." But then but then all of a sudden it's like that. After you just turned it in or so, after you just mail it, send it maybe by email or so, and I know that sometimes some of those online forms that a lot of things that you do online that you're like after you spend about 15-20 minutes working on something and then after it's submitted and then you're like wondering to where, wait a minute, did I do that right? Oh, and then after a few days, it seems like to where that maybe if you don't hear from anything or something like that, then you're like wondering to where, what am I doing wrong? And so it's like, well, what went wrong? I'm like, well, what's going on here? Well, what did I do? What's, how come, I'm trying to figure out, what happened, what was going on that what went wrong. But anyway, I'm sure that we more likely weren't, or that between right and wrong, and I know, like with anybody, that I keep thinking though that each time that maybe I may be wrong about something, I keep thinking about really, am I do people or I don't think people are looking at you as like what you call as a liar, dishonest, or anything like that. So we weren't to where that whenever people or so anybody that may say is to where you were wrong about this and you were wrong about that. And sometimes that, how do we handle that to where that, whenever we are wrong about something, and then I guess as they say is to where, well, you can always apologize if you're wrong, but let's just say they ask you that, you don't have to apologize. It's like, yeah, you may have heard that before to where people make mistakes, but on the other hand, it is knowing about is to where that, anything that for like anything such as to where that how do you handle it to where that if you're going to be wrong about something and then you apologize, but then thinking about it to where that yeah, well, people may ask you, again as to where about what's it, your opinion about this or that, and then like, well, I don't know why you're asking me because like I was wrong the last time, wasn't I? Like, well, you were kind of, but not really. I'm like, you were right and wrong. I'm like, you were about 40% right, and then you were about 50% wrong. So more likely they likely weren't. To where if it goes from 50 to 50, to where that you were wrong about that, but then you were right about this. So it seems like to where that a lot of times that you're like warned to where you have any other direction, likely warned to where that for anybody that may warrant to where that you're going to be asked a question or so and thinking about as to where that yeah, that's not done professionally because there's something that went wrong or so on the application. The information they need to collect or so, yeah, well, the wrong data that could be placed on there or so, and you may think about as to where that really, what do we call that for whenever something that may have been done or completed wrong, but then somebody that may still accepted it, and you're like, warrant to where, well, wait a minute, Mike, I can't get hired on this position yet just because there are some corrections I need to make on a statement. I'm like, well, don't worry about it. I don't know, I can't see these errors, these mistakes that you're talking about. So sometimes it seems like to where that anything related to maybe a job resume or an interview that if we point out, if we find some mistakes or maybe something that we filled out wrong or something like that, and we're like warranted to her, is that considered a mistake, or is that considered what you call getting the whole situation understood? Is that, anybody that may warrant to her that, yeah, any information that's provided on the profile, and some of it that may be what you call, some of it may be the wrong answers or so, but on the other hand, that, for like they usually say is to where try to complete it the best of your knowledge. What does that basically mean? Is to where that review it a couple of times. Is this the best information for what you do know as of right now? So more likely that they may warrant to where is that we would know for sure is to where that, yeah, just like if you're going to be filling out, for financial aid, or if maybe become, working on your taxes, that there may be a lot of things that maybe that we do know and we don't know about, information that's asked for. And some of that may not be related to you. Some of it may be related to maybe medical papers, and some of it could be maybe related to the parents and maybe the children or the cousins or so from the families and from the friends. And you're like warned to where that, yeah, that there may have been some source of information, updates maybe to change or so. And you're like warned to where something that's wrong on there. But anyway, but talk about for extremely happy is knowing about really that for anything that more likely that we do, and thinking about really that people are going to more likely say is to her that they're not going to bother you, just knowing about as long as you're happy and that you're satisfied for what you're doing, as well as for your career, that you want to go ahead and move forward toward that anything that you want to accomplish, your goals, and as well as your dreams was. But your dreams is to where that anything that like I say is to where that you've had a passion for this ever since you were young. But then thinking about is to where that you have other people that may have suggested to where get into maybe playing sports, or maybe checking into maybe be a doctor's for a doctor's degree, or maybe be a fighter pilot, helicopter pilot. You'll be a pilot or a truck driver or so. But a lot of my passion was interested. A lot of it was design, was in the art, and like with anybody's to where you're gonna be extremely happy and knowing about. I'm sure people say that they'll respect that, for anything we put our minds up for. But anyway, but talk about right here is like talk about is to where anything is like be extremely happy about, and then knowing about is like for anybody they may say is like, what did I do wrong? What went wrong here? What did I do wrong? And I like wanted to where, well, there may have been something that may have been that it may have been wrong, but on the other hand too it could be corrected. But then I guess the important things to know about is to where that for just to how the situation happened is to where for like for what would we call for a happy ending is to where that job interview or so that you may have had a you may have wore you may have had the wrong tie, or maybe the wrong dress code or so on. You were supposed to maybe wear a certain type of clothing. Maybe had a they probably asked you to have your hair brushed back or combed back or so. They may have asked you to where you have your information all together whenever you show up for a job interview, or maybe for a doctor's appointment or anything like that. So anybody that may warrant, or it seems like almost anything that you do, you're going to maybe find something wrong. But then thinking about it to where that really that for one thing that more likely that is right is to where that yeah that well you should have you showed up for your appointment, and as well as you made the phone call, you had the papers, you thought you were even reminded as to where that yeah the papers, anything, any source of information you just see is. And I know like with anybody's to where that just do the best we can, just to be able to take care of something. But anyway, but thanks for watching Man Me 25, and have a great day.